Now we know why Dr. Anthony Fauci received that preemptive pardon. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul just revealed the dark reason why he got that coverage going back to that specific year.
1 million Americans died, and I think they deserve to know the truth. Anthony Fauci has advocated for dangerous gain-of-function research for 2 decades now. The question why is not a question that he can have liability for. He was given a pardon. Interestingly, the pardon starts in 2014. That's when the funding of the lab in Wuhan started. So I think he should answer questions. As far as pleading the fifth when you have a pardon, all you have to do is tell the truth, just not commit a new crime. But if we were to grant him immunity from telling the truth, of what value, would his testimony be?
And so are we going to see accountability for Fauci? Well, judging by the look on his face from some photographs that were taken outside his Washington, D.C. home, he is absolutely fearing for the worst. Before we get into this story, please like, share, and comment at the Becker Brief. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. Dr. Anthony Fauci has been a lightning rod of controversy regarding the coronavirus pandemic response. And he recently appeared before the public in testimony at the U.S. Senate, and he pled the fifth 111 times. He would not answer questions, and it comes after some damning revelations in his so-called personal diary. The divergence between his public and private statements is stark, and he had some explaining to do, but quite blankly refused to do it. He doesn't feel like he owes the public any answers. He doesn't feel like he is owed any accountability. He is above the law. And much like Ern McCracken from Kingpin, he believes he is now free to do whatever he wants. He is retired from public life, and so he is just going to live on in his sunset years. He is going to skate free. He is not going to be held accountable. Well, there was some bad news for him, and not just the criminal referral for contempt of Congress that was forwarded to the DOJ, but 4 states have opened up criminal investigations into him, and at the forefront of this was Florida, led by Attorney General James Utmeyer. He said, quite frankly, that nothing is off the table, and he included deception and misleading the public, fraudulent activities, and I think all of this potentially fits the bill for Dr. Fauci, because of course he was funding gain-of-function research at the Wuhan laboratory through a cutout called EcoHealth Alliance. And we hope to see Peter Daszak of EcoHealth Alliance called before the Senate to testify about what was the nature of the research and if potentially there were any links between what was going on at Wuhan and the novel coronavirus that was found in the region of Wuhan, China. So there was another potential witness into Dr. Fauci's activities, an assistant that was reportedly told to delete tons of emails. This is a violation of the law. You have to preserve government records and also prevent any deletion of possibly damning information. And so Dr. Anthony Fauci, the looks of it is that he is facing real legal trouble and he could be held accountable for this. Now, just because of the criminal referral for contempt of Congress, he could be facing up to a year in prison. We believe that is very unlikely that the 85-year-old will be sent to prison. And that is something that is discouraging for a lot of people that want to see some recompense for the grave travesties that were committed in the name of the COVID pandemic response. And that includes lockdowns and mandates of various kinds. And children were definitely harmed, according to widespread reports. You can go to the Washington Post and even mainstream publications like that one to see the type of educational and social harm that was done to children during the pandemic. So Dr. Anthony Fauci is someone who's being called to account for all of these policies that have caused a lot of damage to America. We are still dealing with the aftermath of it. And so the least we can do is hold not just Dr. Anthony Fauci, but anyone who abused the science. And it's really interesting because now we're seeing some truth-telling coming from his cohorts, whether that be the CDC director, Robert Redfield. He recently appeared on television and said that gain-of-function research is still going on. under a different scientific rubric.
Robert Redfield joins us now. Doctor, thank you for joining me. It's always good to be with you. I'm just curious right out of the gate here what your reaction is to this contempt investigation from the Senate that will now go to the Department of Justice for your former colleague, Dr. Fauci.
You know, Martha, my biggest view was I was very sad and very disappointed that Fauci didn't take the opportunity to tell the truth and explain to the American people the decisions that he made, because obviously one of those decisions was contrary to some of his statements as opposed to his diary. His decision was to support gain-of-function research. As you know, in 2012, he wrote the op-ed in the Washington Post that said this research was important and it was worth the risk even if we got a major pandemic. Well, I'm of the view that it's pretty clear now that the COVID pandemic was a direct result of science and the research, gain-of-function research, that was done in the Wuhan lab, that was funded by NIH as well as DOD, USAID, and the State Department. And we really need to resolve that, because I'm of the view that we should not be doing that research. It's dangerous research. It has great potential to cause the next pandemic. I think we're at a risk for a next pandemic. I think it's going to be a bird flu pandemic. But I think the real risk for the bird flu pandemic is not from nature, but from scientists playing around with this in the laboratory, and we should not be doing that.
So where is the U.S. still funding this kind of research in the lab? And it is just, I just want to put a pin on the point that you just made, because you are saying that you 100% believe that this virus that we all suffered through for years in emotional and physical ways came from the gain-of-function research within the lab. It was an engineered virus, correct?
Yes, I don't have any doubt about that. And Steve Quay, you should get him on your show, just wrote a book that I think is very good. It's called The Genome as the Witness, and he takes you through the genome to really show you that there really is no other explanation, that this was a scientifically manipulated virus that actually emerged. And I think it's a clever title, The Genome as the Witness. But it really is, I think there's no doubt about it. The intelligence community now agrees that the most likely explanation was it came from the lab. You know, unfortunately, we won't be able to definitively have all the answers without the Chinese cooperating, but I don't think there's any question this virus came from the lab.
And
it's significant.
This kind of research is still going on. And
yes.
It's funded by U.S. dollars. Is that correct?
Well, the president has passed an executive order to stop the research, but the truth is this type of research is being done. Part of the reason is the scientific community chose to change the definition. So if you start with a virus that's not pathogenic for humans and turn it into a highly pathogenic for humans, they say that's not gain-of-function research. Right. In order for it to be gain-of-function research, it has to be pathogenic from the beginning. So it's false. It's a false argument. Very disappointing. We ought to move away from this type of research. Yeah. It's dangerous. I'm a big supporter of Senator Paul on this issue.
And of course, Dr. Deborah Birx, she has been in the media, and some of the statements that she had are quite eye-opening, because she talked about locking down hard in a lot of these states ahead of the elections to show that they mean business.
It's interesting, by the way, we're starting to hear from other people that were on his team.
writing a book.
Right. Deborah Birx, who at one point led the coronavirus task force, weighed in yesterday. Here's what she said.
If you get them tests, instead of quarantining people who are exposed, you just only tell the people who are infected to stay home. That is a very different approach. It worked fabulously in universities. It's why we were able to keep them open, and Secretary DeVos was working on keeping K through 12 open. There were solutions, but it became very political, and we all have to be aware, because it was a presidential election year, it was really important for blue states to show that they were taking it very seriously, and they overclosed. And we just have to be honest that that happened. And that's why that discussion from both sides of the aisle and a resolution and a way to go forward is critical, so that we can do this right in the future.
Right. And she's the one person who was caught visiting her family, which she told everyone not to visit her family. She's also the one that was on with me who said, oh, wear goggles. Wear 2 masks and consider wearing goggles. Can you believe this? So I have no patience for her either.
That is not how public policy is done. It is done with open debate and input from not just those putting forth the predominant scientific theory, but also from naysayers and dissenters. So it looks like our public policy process was broken during the COVID pandemic. Free speech was shut down, freedom of assembly, freedom of movement, and bodily autonomy rights, they were shoved to the wayside in some cases. And it is a warning that there are some real dangerous times ahead if we do not get a grip on what happened during the coronavirus pandemic and hold people to account like Dr. Anthony Fauci. I mean, we are getting reports that AI is being used to create viruses. I just did a report about that previously, and that is taking place at Stanford University. They created a number of viruses that were used to target bacteria, specifically E. coli. But the blueprint for all of this, we've seen it before. It is extremely dangerous. And so we need to hold scientists to account for those who engaged in risky research, particularly dual use research in an enemy country, which is China. They obviously had surveillance over the entire region, including the Wuhan laboratory. And there wasn't a wet market per se that started this outbreak. Many government agencies credibly believe that it started in that laboratory. So Fauci should be held to account. Weigh in with your own thoughts. We always appreciate hearing from you at the Becker Brief.